Start Arlene fast.
Yes.
Don, where's Don? Where did Don? Okay. We have about a minute before we start. We have several bills before the committee, so get ready for me to call the meeting to order. Our first presenters can go ahead and come up to the, and I already have some of my committee members taking their jackets off because it's too hot in here, so I think y'all are going to raise the temperature a little bit. Good morning. I asked Representative Hogan to start us off with a prayer. He has a special request.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Maybe the Lord can hear me too. Uh, I'd like to open this up with a prayer for a blessing on this committee. So, dear Lord, we pray for this day, and we're just so glad to have this day, to have this committee and the process that we go through in hearing the bills that we hear, and may we make the right decisions. In Christ's name we pray, amen.
Thank you. We will begin with our subcommittee reports, and so I'll do. Is Tim here? What number is Tim? I don't see him. All right, then. All right, so environmental quality report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Environmental Quality Subcommittee of Natural Resources and Environment met on February 26th and 27th to consider three bills. After careful review and the hard work of numerous interested parties, the subcommittee submits the following recommendations. House Bill 93, do pass, committee by substitute. House Bill 201, do pass by committee substitute. House Bill 445, do pass.
Thank you. Our resource management subcommittee report, I'll go ahead and read it for our chair. So after careful review and hearing from everyone, the subcommittee submits the following recommendations. House Bill 223, do pass by committee substitute, and House Bill 382, do pass. So we're ready to proceed with our process of hearing bills. We have 6 bills before us today, and we have a special situation that we'll begin our meeting with. The Rules Chairman has handed back to us House Bill 220 with an explanation both from Representative Terry Rogers and Chairman Powell. And let's see, I think your mics are on.
Yes, ma'am. HB 220 passed out unanimously from the subcommittee and from this committee. And basically what it does is the original bill was a 5-year extension of the Solid Waste Act and the Hazardous Waste Act. We combined the two. Based on conversations with Chairman Powell, we took it down to 1 year. He's got some concerns on some things that he's addressing with a bill that we voted on in the House, or resolution, I guess it was, that we voted on in the House the other day. And so anyway, we thought we were okay, and then he's got some concerns regarding the numbers, and he has sent it back to you guys. And I'll just say that our position right now is we think that we had said that we had a good bill to start with, but we're willing to listen to him, and hopefully we can work something out. I don't think I have any other choice but to listen to him, but you know, but that's okay. That's all right. But no, seriously, we're willing to listen, and as to what he has to say, we have an open position, but we do think it's extremely important that this bill is too important to the people of Georgia not to go ahead and advance somehow or another. So I'm going to turn it over to Chairman Powell, let him explain his position.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Give you a little history. And Solid Waste Trust Fund, Hazardous Waste Trust Fund have been around for a long time. The solid waste is basically for recycling tires and disposing of tires, and is funded by a $1 per tire fee when you buy a set of new tires to go to the state. The problem's been the state has spent about a third of it for its intended purpose and has spent the rest of it in the general fund. The same thing with the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund. That is a surcharge on tipping fees per ton of 75 cents per ton. And the same thing has happened with it. About 2/3 of it has been redirected and only a third used for its intended purpose. In approximately 2011, I introduced a bill that basically, since we could not, without constitutional protection, dedicate fees. Mine did the reverse. It basically said if the fees weren't spent on their intended purpose, then they would be reduced to match the amount of the appropriation. It passed with maybe 4 negative votes in the House, got stalled in the Senate. And then when the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund and Solid Waste Trust Fund came up for renewal in approximately 2013, we grafted that language onto them that if the fund was not spent for its intended purpose, then the fee would be reduced. Unfortunately, even though that is the law of the state of Georgia today, and it passed both the House and the Senate and was signed by the governor directed his departments to ignore it and said that he didn't think it was constitutional. So as a result, we drafted a constitutional provision that would allow us to dedicate fees statutorily. And it's been 3 terms of this body. I think for the last 6 years it's been hanging around here. It did not pass the first term. It passed last year, got stalled in the Senate, and is passed this year. And I presume it will get stalled in the Senate again. So in order for us to do what we have said we wanted to do, and we've given the agencies, the governor's office, and everybody else plenty of notice that we're serious about this and we aren't going away, this is the perfect time, since we've got this bill up for renewal, to say what we've told them that we wanted them to do for the last 8 or 9 years, which is if you aren't going to spend it for what we intended, then we're going to reduce the fee to match what you're doing. So there's an amendment that I think is in your folder that reduces the tire fee from $1 to 31 cents, which matches the amount of the appropriation in the current year's budget, and reduces the 75-cent tipping fee down to 51 cents. So $1 down to 38, I'm sorry, and then 75 cents down to 51 cents, which matches the appropriation. And so if we can't get it constitutionally done, then the only recourse that we've got is to reduce the fee. So that's why the bill is back before you, and it has a 1-year sunset on it, because if the constitutional amendment were to pass out of the Senate and be presented to the voters, then next year we can put this back to where it was. But right now, with the posture it's in, The only way that we can tell folks that we really mean what we've said and we've been saying for the last 10 years at least is to change the law.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we've had a conversation prior to this, and since this is relatively a new substitute to the bill that came before us, I have said that we will have another full committee meeting to hear his bill. So we've got 5 other bills to take up. The actual author of the bill would like to say something, so go ahead.
No, first of all, let me just say I agree with Chairman Powell on his concept. I voted for his resolution. I think it's a good thing. I fully support that. This is just a bill that we're dealing with right now. The only concern that I would ask you to look at, and Chairman Powell and I can talk offline on this, on the tire fee, when you're talking about reducing down to 38, yeah, we're based on numbers that we're seeing. We're thinking it should be more in the line of like 60 cents, and the reason for that is that what that would allow us to do would be to match the amount of money that they've had overall on the track record of the entire time, not just last year's numbers. And secondly, it would still leave a $10 million hole in the budget that we'd have to figure out somewhere. So I'd like to take that into consideration. The other thing is that we would like to see, and I think Chairman Powell and I could talk offline with EPD about this, but we would like to see that the numbers that come into this amendment are numbers that are based on the entire history of these funds, not just last year's numbers. And we can talk about that. Okay with that?
As the committee can see, this is an issue that we need to consider and ask y'all questions. And we will meet very shortly on this issue. But the information handed out, which is the summary sheet and the substitute, if you will take your time and look over that so you're prepared when we call the meeting. This is before the full committee because we had already passed out a bill through our committee process. And both the gentlemen are available to you if you have any questions. I thank you for your time. And I'm not going to take questions right now because we're not going to be voting on this bill, but save your questions and let's get to them when we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So I see we have our Majority Leader Burns here today. If he'll come forward and present House Bill 382.
Good morning, Chair Lady and members of the committee. Good to be with y'all. If it pleases the Chair Lady, is it okay if I'm calling her Child's Company's meeting?
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, ma'am. Good morning again, members of the committee. We were out doing a little flood control as we were coming over, so pardon us for being a little bit late. We were making sure that everything was in order from that perspective. But thank you, committee, for hearing us, and thank you for your support on this initiative in the past, especially the Chair Lady and Chairman Watson and his great work last year, and y'all's support on this committee and in the House on the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Act. As y'all all know, constitutional amendment that was approved overwhelmingly by the voters of this state. The Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Act would dedicate a portion of state revenues that are collected on equipment, on outdoor recreation equipment to the protection and conservation of our state's natural resources, as y'all remember. Beginning on July the 1st of this year, this state will dedicate approximately $20 million to the cause. And no doubt this legislation is generational. It will affect generations, our current generation and generations to come, as we protect our wildlife, our habitat, the cleansing, our state parks, our trails, and how they're maintained, and maintain our state's legacy of outdoor recreation and make sure that it's preserved. Today I bring before you House Bill 382, which in some sense of the word can be seen as a final effort to finish the drill that began several years ago to make sure we pass this landmark legislation. And also to make sure we properly implement the words and the language and the statute that we passed as the Outdoor Stewardship Act. Now, working in conjunction with the Department of Natural Resources, who are great partners, we have identified some language and some definitions that will ensure that DNR will ensure that DNR will be able to maintain and administer and properly administer the Outdoor Stewardship Act. So I'm going to take you through it real quickly, line by line, if you will, if that pleases the chair lady.
Yes.
In lines 12 through 14 in the bill, we are updating the language regarding the entities that are eligible for grants from the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund to match DNR rules and regulations, a seamless process. Now, in lines 42, for me, it fulfills one of the commitments we made that the funds that come from this act, and Chairman Watson, I think you and I can agree on this, I believe, that we wanted to make sure that this did not detract from any revenue that came into DNR, that this would be a process that stood on its own and maintained its accounting and the funding of the grants that would be done from the funds that were received from this source. So in lines 42 through 44, I would ask you to authorize up to 5% of the funds collected into the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund that may be utilized by the state for administrative purposes. Now, obviously, you guys can figure 5% of $20 million is $1 million. However, we've worked with DNR and GFM. The number was over $500,000, but we reduced that number working with those sources that we feel like a reasonable amount at this point in time would be less than $500,000, probably in the $400,000 range, to maintain and review the grants and make sure it's done properly. And I believe we can do that and have some the assurances that we can do that. And I'll tell you what that assurance is in just a minute. But in lines 50 through 52 and 60 through 62, once again, we're basically updating the language regarding eligible entities and making sure that's in the proper format in that language. And that language also matches the language that we inserted into 12 and 14 and updated. Finally, here's the part that really gives us that opportunity to have oversight into the appropriations and the monies that go into the Outdoor Stewardship Act. In line 70, we're adding that the Department of Natural Resources shall add an overview of its program administrative expenditures to its annual report prepared for the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund. This will ensure both transparency and accountability in the use of these dollars. That report comes to this committee, and it makes sure that this House and our appropriations process, if things are going not quite like we want, we have an opportunity to weigh in and make sure that those funds are spent appropriately and responsibly, that we're being good stewards of those funds as well. So you see that outline this bill simply enable our partners at DNR to administer this legislation. Madam Chairman, that's pretty much what we do. And I've tried to explain to you, I think there's some safeguards built in to make sure we can move forward this legislation in a manner that gets it out there and we start some really good work in our state.
Thank you for your presentation. This is the proper time for any questions, if anyone has any questions. Number 19.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have one with a follow-up, I believe. And I really appreciate all your work on this, but my question is, I see that we do an annual report. Will this act also be subject to audit? You know, the monies allocated, will they be subject to, to audits?
Yes, ma'am, as all these funds are, they will be subject to an audit. That's correct.
Okay, and do you know what that schedule
Oh,
is?
and
I'm
Do
not
you have-
exactly sure of the
I'm sorry,
schedule.
Madam Chair.
All right.
May I follow up?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what kind of schedule that might be on?
No, I do not, but I'll be glad to get that exact schedule as
Thank
we
you.
move through the process and let you know.
Thank you.
Sure, I'd like to know that too.
Yeah.
Thank you. I see no further questions at the proper time. Number 27.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to thank the Majority Leader for fixing my goof ups. He's a good man for doing that, and I appreciate it very much. So, appreciate your work on this, and at the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion to
It's the
pass.
appropriate time.
Motion to pass.
Second. Any further discussion? I see number 12.
I just was going to make a motion.
Okay, thank you. Number 27, that was you. Okay. All right, so I'm calling for the votes. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Mr. Leader. You have your bill.
Madam Chair, thank you, and members, thank you. And I appreciate the wisdom of this committee with moving forward with this legislation. It's going to make a real difference in our state in a very positive way, and we appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for recognizing this hardworking committee. Thank you. Our next bill is Representative Chairman Robert Dickey, House Bill 223. The bill after that is House Bill 93.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And members of the committee, I'm asking for your consideration this morning, HB 223, and we're working off of LC 450251 ERS. This bill is just a bill that clarifies some language and reporting requirements. It's really just simply makes it clear that some routine, regular, ordinary farming practices that are done every day do not fall under some requirements for emergency reporting to EPD. EPA is presently not requiring these. Our present EPD is not requiring them, but just want to get it in code and make sure those things are not required in the future. Any kind of unplanned, unanticipated spill or release would still be reportable under legislation that's there federally. But if you could look at your bill, we'll just sort of start off line 12, just trying to determine what animal waste is, what manure that normally gives off ammonia and those type chemicals into the air every day as they're composted. And 22, we just defined again what a farm is, production of crops, raising of animals. And then the changes is over on the last page, line 71. The code should not apply to the regular application, as I said, of pesticides that farms such as mine and all do each and every day that are under that we're regulated and labeled to do, and then the air emissions from the animal waste there on line 76. So, so again, this is just updating Georgia law to be parallel with what's going on federal. Madam Chair, nobody spoke in opposition at subcommittee. It was a unanimous vote. EPD testified that they have no issues with the bill. Several groups are in favor of it: Georgia Agribusiness Council, Georgia Chamber, Georgia Poultry, Georgia Pest Control, Georgia Urban Ag Council, and the Georgia Peach Council. So
I bet you had influence there.
so thank you very much. That's be welcome any questions.
Thank you. I see one question, number 14.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Representative Dickley, on line 12, and when you add that back into line 71 on down, does that mean that I can quit following my cows around with a clipboard marking every time they burp?
Mr. Chairman, I don't want you to have to
be in
start doing.
compliance with the Green New Deal.
That's what we're trying to prevent from coming, Mr. Chairman. You and I both don't have time to have to do that.
I want to thank Chairman McCall for the politically correct word of burp for whatever goes on. So we now have that in our vocabulary for trying to deal with anything like that. So I'm looking for, yes, number 15.
At the proper time.
Okay, it is the proper time.
I would like to make a motion to do pass substitute House Bill 223.
Second. All right, any further conversation? Seeing none, the chair calls for the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Thank you. You have your bill.
Thank you, committee.
And next is House Bill 93. Speaking for this bill is Representative Rick Williams. Just come to the front. House Bill 93. The bill after that, the last two bills are Representative Don Hogan's bills. 93.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I asked Representative Hogan to join me. I don't have a copy of 93.
Oh, that's our error. Hold on. We'll definitely get you a copy.
There were some changes made, and I didn't get it after the changes. but Representative Hogan has it memorized, so we could proceed with his memory if you wish.
I'm surprised Representative Hogan didn't put help with his bill presentations today up to the good Lord, as he's going to have to face this committee. So,
Well,
thank you.
But
Prayed hard.
All right,
Your-
you did pray hard earlier. All right, thank you.
your committee has got a great record of passing everything out, so we don't want to break that record. So, okay.
An annual record, but not a continuous record.
Go right ahead.
What you want me to do?
Present 93, please, sir.
93 is the dewatering, if I remember correct, and Georgia Power has agreed to post a notice that we've started dewatering of the ponds with Georgia Power, so that's basically what this does.
Are there any questions? It is the proper time. Do pass, and I have a second. Any further questions? All in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, nay? Well, Mr. Williams, you might be asked to carry several bills before this committee, especially when you do a lateral punt like that, shot like that. So, worked pretty well.
Are you through with me?
No, sir, I want you to present 94.
No.
No. Thank you, Mr. Williams. And
Are you ready for 94, Madam Chair?
that bill is not before the committee. That's still in
Oh.
subcommittee.
I'm sorry.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good try. So, Representative Hogan, we have you with your next two bills. We'll give you a chance to get your material together. And while we're in this posture of waiting for House Bill 201 and House Bill 445 to our committee and to those who are following our committee, we are getting close to the 28th day, which I believe is next Thursday. So we will be calling some full committee meetings, and we might even have some subcommittee meetings depending upon what's going on. We will send out electronic notices as soon as we know, and we'll post on our bulletin board. So thank you. This is your day.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
House Bill 201 first, if you don't mind.
201, would it be appropriate to ask DNR folks to, one of them to come up?
That's
sit with
fine, yes.
Doug? Look at him. He went swimming this morning already.
Well, I say you manage bad weather pretty well coming from the coast, so thank you for being here. Really appreciate it.
201, the substitute to 201, House Bill 201, LC 450254 ERS. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I've worked with the department on both of these bills today, and we've spent several hours. But the one that I'm really passionate about is the House Bill 201, which tries to protect our estuary waters so they'll continue to be pristine. We have liveaboards, and this is known as the liveaboard bill, to where it prevents liveaboards from pumping solid waste or raw sewage overboard in the estuary areas of this state. And that's basically what it does. It does authorize the department to declare mooring areas and that they can regulate where the boats dock that are on mooring areas, and they be certified by the department. So basically that's what this bill does.
Thank you. Are there any questions? This is your red letter day, so I see no, well, I have a question, number 11.
I don't have a question. At the proper time, I'd just like to make.
Thank you. It's proper time then.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to pass.
There's
House
a
Bill
second.
201.
Any further discussion?
Committee
All those in
substitute.
favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nay? Thank you. You have your bill, and I'm really glad that Tom McCall did not choose to really explain
But I
what
didn't
this
want him
bill
run-
does.
I didn't want him running cows around in the estuary areas of the state.
Thank you. And now we move on to House Bill 445.
House Bill 445 is, I also work with the department very hard with this, and with the commissioner, and with Doug from down in the coastal area. And it basically is a duplicate of what we passed last session that passed unanimously in the House. And what House Bill 445 does, it amends the Shore Protection Act passed in 1979 to protect the sand sharing system of Georgia's barrier islands. In doing so, it protects the upland property and important habitat and provides recreation. The amendment does the following: changes the name permitting issue authority to Committee, Shore Protection Committee throughout. Clarifies the definition of a dynamic dune field to provide greater protection of the sand sharing system, and that's line 13 through 38. Defines minor activity, and that's line 39 to 45. Redefines the definition of ordinary high water mark, line 46 through 51. Includes the law application to the backyards of property landward of sand dunes stabilized by the protection shadow of the groin, which is permitted by and continues to be regulated by DNR, and that's line 84 to 88, and makes clear the difference between a stable and dynamic dune, line 55 through 64. The only difference between this amendment and what was passed in the House unanimously is 84 through 88. And that's the bill, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Number 16.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do have one question that kind of concerns me about the change of the Shore Protection Committee. It seems to me that that's kind of taking away some local authority for them to be able to organize and make some decisions about their communities. And it seems like there's more interest in the sea level rise now than ever before, and there's evidence of it. So I'm curious to know why we would take away that opportunity for communities to go through that certification process and allow for local input.
Would it be all right for Doug to answer that?
Yes, it is to me, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the question. So this act has been in place for 40 years, and in the 40 years, we have never had a local issuing authority. The Shore Protection Committee, the membership, the 5 members of that, including the Commissioner of DNR, have made the decisions regarding permits. And because that committee has never been stood up in 40 years, we felt as though it was best to remove that committee and make sure that it was clear through, or not remove the committee, remove the local issuing authority, and make sure that it was clear throughout the bill that it was the committee, the Shore Protection Committee, that has issued the permits. So it's not taking away anything essentially because they've never had it. It's never been enacted.
Thank you.
Can I do one quick follow-up?
Yes.
So in light of the things that we keep hearing are happening on the coast, you don't think, I mean, what would it hurt to keep it?
What would it hurt? It wouldn't hurt anything. It's just excess language in the bill. There's a whole section there that's LIA, and I think you all are aware of the issues that are there and whether or not some municipalities and governments are equipped to handle some of the decisions. That's one of the reasons I think that it hasn't ever been stood up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 10.
Chairman,
State your name for the committee.
I'm State Representative Pat Gardner from Atlanta, and I love the beach as much as all of you do. And I think our coastline is a treasure. What is in the committee that's going to be set up? What is it? Is there any prohibition from 3 landowners who have particular interest in expanding, building closer to the water from serving on the committee?
So the committee has been in place for 40 years, and it's made up of coastal residents as well as the Commissioner of DNR who serves as its chairman. So this isn't a new committee. It's been in place, and we've had a variety of individuals fulfill the roles, from retired scientists to retired politicians to lawyers to there's been a variety. So right now it's made up of an attorney from St. Simon's, a retired landfill specialist from McIntosh County, a county commissioner from Bryan County, and an independent businessman from Savannah. Those are the 4 individuals in addition to the commissioners. It's a variety of folks who filled that role.
So you don't see
Thank
that it
you.
would
Direct
change.
through the chair, please. Second question?
Yeah, well, I'm just kind of a follow-up. I'm trying to understand the committee. So it's really not a change. It could stay the same.
That is
It's-
correct.
You're calling it something new?
No, ma'am, we're not calling it anything new. The issue is that there was the ability when the law was written to have a local issuing authority. In other words, to give the counties, city, municipalities the ability to vote on permits that come before them, but that's never been enacted. So all we're saying is to clarify what's in here, to shorten it by an entire section, to remove that local issuing authority, and throughout the document, just change it to committee, just to make it clear.
So I also, may I
follow up?
one more time. I also noticed that you shortened the time for public input, and
And-
that seemed of concern to me.
So there's two reasons for that. The main one is the minor activities that you see in here. Those are things like fire pits or landscaping that may occur in a jurisdictional area. Right now, an individual who wants to build a planter in the jurisdictional area of their lawn has to come before the full committee, go through the full process, and it could take anywhere from 2 months to 6 months, depending on how backed up things are. The minor activity allows the commissioner to look at those items and make a determination of whether or not he can himself issue a permit, which is appealable if need be, or whether it needs to go before the committee via an email, or whether it needs to go before the full committee. And so when we look at those minor activities, we think a shortened period of time, 2 weeks, is adequate to handle that. Also, there are permits that'll go out on notice for 30 days, have to be amended in some way, and then come back. And so rather than put them back out on another 30-day notice, oftentimes we're trying to make a certain committee date. We want to shorten that period of time. But it does say at least 15. So our commitment is for all the full permit applications that come in, they still go through a minimum of a 30-day notice.
Thank you. I have more questions from committee members. Thank you. Number 12?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Mary Frances Williams from Marietta and Cobb County. I'm looking at lines 112 through 117, and you've just been talking about that. Can you please explain to me what minor activity is, and what's the biggest project that might be covered under minor activity?
So you'll notice, let me get to that actual line. So the end of that is 112. Let's go back over to the definition of what a minor activity is, and you'll actually see those in the definition.
Line 39.
Thank you. So, first of all, we do dune crossovers. People have property, they want to be able to cross the dune or cross the rock revetment. So that's kind of the end of that. You'll see that crossovers are considered minor activities rather than full. But then up above, it talks about decks, patios, porches, native landscaping. And the best example that I'll give you of why we want to do this is an individual who came to us who wanted to put a planter around an oak tree and install landscaping. That was it. And that had to go through a full-blown permit application and several months to get approval to do that in their own backyard. And that's an example of things that come before the committee on a regular basis. We just feel like that those types of activities can be considered by the commissioner, and if he then decides it needs to go further to the committee, it can go there as well.
Thank you. Number 14, state your name, please.
Tom McCall. What struck a note with me was what you just said about the guy wanting to put a planter on property that he pays taxes on. And his wife would have to be thinking 6 months ahead to get it through the permit process, or he'd be having to plant some other kind of plant because he can't get the permit to build a planter on his private property.
Yes, sir, that's correct. But remember that his private property in this instance would be within the jurisdiction of this act. Right now, the jurisdiction is determined by a pre-existing 1979 structure. So if the house was built prior to July 1st, 1979, or the presence of a 20-foot tree, where those items line up, that's the jurisdictional line currently. And the reason that Representative Hogan is bringing this, and he has personal interest in this, is that oftentimes that 20-foot tree may reside 3 lots inland of the sand sharing system. And so we are putting private citizens and private property in the jurisdictional area that a lot of people such as yourself would consider maybe not necessary. And so that's why we're trying to remove that 20-foot tree. Representative Hogan, the reason he came to us asking about this is he's got a property on St. Simon's, the 79, he lives, well, his condominium is 2 houses.
No, that's my permanent house
That's your
on
permanent
Myrtle
house.
Street, yeah.
And so a 1979 house was removed. The jurisdictional line now moves back 2 lots to his house.
Almost to
Can
my
I
house.
have one more?
Yes.
So, he's still paying taxes on his land.
And a lot of taxes.
And I think, I think there's a bill that came out of Ag Committee the other day that really favors private property rights too. And, maybe we need to start looking toward private property rights, that we are charging people tax and have to get a permit to do something with their own property.
And if I might make a comment, Hurricane Irma came through, and a lot of those 20-foot trees are not there any longer. So we're in a mess as trying to establish the line.
And one further question, number one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Carla Drenner from DeKalb. We talked about this the other day in subcommittee, and just for the benefit of the entire committee, could you explain lines 84 through 88 for us again?
And before you answer that question, I noticed you weren't here yesterday. We had another subcommittee meeting on this very bill, so we spent our time on that yesterday. Thank you. Go ahead.
Madam Chair?
No, your question is fine. He'll answer it.
You got that? You want me?
Go ahead.
Oh, I know.
So the way that I understand what the representative has written is that if the committee, the Shore Protection Committee, has previously permitted a groin, which is a perpendicular structure to a beach, that groin and the groin is there to trap sand to hold it on a beach. And so if I read that correctly, that groin and up to 10 times the length of that groin parallel to the beach would basically be not part of the operation of this part of the Shore Protection Committee. So the line for that 5,000 feet would become the seaward edge of a platted lot that has utility lines already ran to it.
Is there a follow-up? Yeah.
Representative Hogan, when I spoke with him about this, he said that, to his knowledge, there was not another groin anywhere except on this particular place. I just wanted you to tell.
To my knowledge, it's not.
Okay.
I mean, that's the only groins I know of, and groins have been permitted to try to protect the sand that's been re-nourishing those beaches. And prior to the last groin going in, Sea Island's re-nourishment wound up on St. Simon's, and we were very thankful for that because we didn't have to do the re-nourishment at a tremendous cost. Sea Island paid that cost, and we benefited on St. Simon's from the re-nourishment of Sea Island.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other questions, so this is the proper time. A motion? Is there a second? All right. Now, this is when there are any other questions or any other issues to bring up. All right. Do you want to have a closing comment?
I'd just like to thank the committee for their consideration of a real serious situation we got up and down the coast and trying to maintain the sand sharing system that we have. And I'd also like to thank DNR for working with me religiously on this bill. We spent hours on it, and I thank the committee, and I thank Doug and DNR for helping me. Thank you.
Thank you. One final comment then, or question number 16?
I just wanted to say that while there are several things in here that I think are very good and needed for the coast, I am still very concerned that we would take away that opportunity for the locals to have certification because of the fact that there are changes already occurring and we know more to come. And for that reason, I'd like to let it be known I'm going to vote no, so in the hopes that we might be able to talk about that a little further.
Thank you. And that was in the form of a question. Is that not true? Thank you. So, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay.
Thank you.
Four noes? A hand vote? All those in favor signify by raising your hand. All those opposed, please signify by raising your hand. All right, thank you. We have our vote.
Thank you.
You have your bills, and good luck with rules.
Thank you,
So,
Madam Chair.
Thank you, too, for your help. This committee at this time will adjourn, but keep in mind and look for our posting, because there will be some other bills before the committee more than likely. Thank you.